You are now tuned in to Everything But Religion, the perfect blend of ignorance and intelligence. With DJ Storyteller and J Ma Boy Wonder, the latest news, oh yeah, and all of the top trending topics of the world culture, of what's going on for the moment and in time. DJ Storyteller, J Ma, Boy Wonder, powered by Virginia Radio. Let's go.
What's up, world? It's DJ Storyteller,
Woo! Alongside J Ma, the Boy Wonder.
and this is Everything But Religion.
That's right, the perfect blend of ignorance and intelligence.
Yes, sir. Tell them what we got today.
Well, today we have two very, very special guests riding along with us in the EBR show. We have Dr. Eileen O'Brien. She's a sociologist and critical race scholar, and she's currently an educator in her field. And we also have Dr. Ninochka McTaggart, and she's also a sociologist and is currently the diversity and inclusion specialist at the Gina Davis Institution. And together, they have been working on race and gender representation in the media, including hip hop, film, sports, and television. And they're also the co-authors. That's right, clap it up.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They're also the co-authors of White Privilege, the persistence of racial hierarchy in a culture of denial. Welcome to the EBR show.
Welcome.
How y'all doing today?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for taking out time. So, Dr. Ninochka, I want to make sure I said that right at least one time to give them student loans the respect that they deserve. But here you
I
are,
heard that.
I'm J-Mar, and this is Storyteller right here. We're going to make sure we call, this is Nosh. That's the nickname that you said that you go by?
Yes.
Okay. Just to make sure I don't want to put no disrespect on them loans. Not at all.
Not at all.
So before we go any further, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a light introduction of you all.
I guess I can go first. I'm Dr. Ninochka McTaggart. I'm a sociologist that studies race, gender, and popular culture with a focus on mass media and representations in film and television. I'm currently the Associate Vice President of Research and Insights at the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. Well, very nice to meet you, and thank you for taking time out to be
Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, I'm Dr. Eileen O'Brien, also a sociologist. I study race. Yes, I'm a critical race scholar. I have really enjoyed my latest project with Dr. Nosh looking at white privilege. And when I say enjoy, I enjoy working with her, but the stuff we've been writing about lately is a little bit depressing. But we are invigorated by some changes that we see on the horizon, and we hope that we will see more of that in the future, but we want to stay vigilant. We did have a little more fun working on hip hop. That was a little less depressing. But we moved on to other more urgent things. I've written a few other books before this one, and maybe we'll get into that later. But I've looked at white anti-racist activists as well as Latino and Asian American issues. So lots of racial justice topics we both are interested in.
That's awesome. Well, I guess now that we know a little bit about yourselves, how did you two meet?
Well, we actually met now about 10 years ago, I believe. We actually joined up for a conference paper for the American Sociological Association. We both had interest in hip hop and race. So Eileen was starting a project on Asian Americans in hip hop. And I was a grad student at the time, and that sounded interesting to me as beginning my career as a race scholar. And that's kind of how it happened. We just had that common interest.
Cool. I heard you speak a little bit about the Asian and the hip hop. That's like a big one because I grew up on Wu-Tang, of course, and they always had the little Chinese, the martial art movies, the little snippets and stuff in there, they were named after the Shaolin temples and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That I always thought that was a great part of the culture at that time. I don't see too many like the Asian mixing with the hip hop now these days with the newer rappers. I don't know if it affects it really on the East Coast. I know it's more really on the West Coast than it was on the East Coast. But how did you get into studying that?
Well, it started when Eileen and I became acquainted at that conference, and we kind of just kept going with it for years. And we started doing interviews with Asian Americans involved in different roles in hip hop, whether it be dancing, emceeing, DJing, promoting, and other roles, archiving. And we were just really interested to know how Asian Americans navigate through a predominantly Black cultural art form. And kind of the challenges they face, and also the I guess freedoms from stereotypes that they also experienced by engaging in hip hop culture.
Yeah, I was teaching a seminar in hip hop at Christopher Newport University when I started getting interested in this. And I knew that it would help me to be working with someone on the West Coast, which is when I reached out to Nosh through a mutual contact of ours. And just looking at, as Nosh mentioned, the involvement across cultures was very interesting to us. At the inception of hip hop in the South Bronx in New York, you hear a lot about African Americans, Black Caribbean Americans, as well as Latinos being involved in the early development. Latinos were involved a lot in the breakdancing aspect, if you look at the 4 elements of hip hop. And there's a lot of Filipino DJs out in the West Coast in particular. I know Nosh can speak more to that, but it's interesting as we were looking at our project, the different elements. The MC is a more visible role. You don't see those quite as much for Asian Americans, but Asian Americans and other people of color are very much behind the scenes in various roles in hip hop. So it's interesting for us to learn more just about how that all interplay takes place. And like she said, also this idea that Asian Americans are forced into a stereotype of this model minority when that might not always be how they roll. And so hip hop became kind of a liberating space for them to connect to something else.
That's cool.
That is cool. So being that you all did some research on hip hop when it first, I guess, entered into the South Bronx in the late 70s, how do you feel like it's been received to the public then versus now, when you see how it's pushed more to the front of mainstream and pop culture?
Well, I think that speaks to like the ever evolving nature of hip hop. Hip hop is in its roots, like Eileen was talking about, like this mixture of different racial identities and cultures and roots. And I think that's playing more out when what we see today. It's ever evolving, whether it be from sampling, whether it be involved in what racial groups are, engaging in hip hop. I think to see it now in the mainstream, it makes sense. It just has a more popular appeal. I just think that more people have kind of come on board to it and more familiarized with it since the late 70s. And so it makes sense that it would be more popular in general.
Yeah, and what I learned is you have rap and you have hip hop. And so rap can tend to be very commercialized, but those who are truly in the culture and educate themselves as to the original meaning of it, like you said, oh, sorry, there was a message down there. Was that for us?
Oh, no, you're good. Trying to get these mic
levels
okay.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah, so when you look at rap versus hip hop, Hip hop is very much about immersing yourself in the culture and understanding. A lot of the Asian Americans we talked to talked about that too. You can appropriate a art form without truly understanding it, thinking it's cool or sounds good. But if you don't understand the roots and how it originated and who are the key players, I don't know if you saw this video that was going around with Shock G talking about all the different um, rappers like Biggie and Tupac and how they got their cadence. Did you see that?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so everyone was commenting underneath it. He really knows the culture. He's done his homework. He can talk about that. And really, everyone you talk to, if they're truly grounded in it, that's the kind of conversation they can have with you. And
Mhm.
so I think it's really important to look for that. And most people who are in it look for that more than are you black, white, Latino, whatever. If you're connecting to the culture in such a way, they can tell that versus if you're just skimming off the top and getting something that's going to make you a few dollars, but you don't really understand it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people still to this day, even I think Eminem is an excellent artist. But people still think that he appropriates the culture, but I think he's just like if you, I can't say you go take him out of the equation, but he is hip hop to me.
I think having a sponsor is very important. So having Dr. Dre kind of
Yeah,
as
yeah,
his sponsor when he came out, I think
and
really
50
helped
Cent.
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
That definitely didn't hurt at all.
Oh, not at all, not at all.
That didn't hurt at all.
Yeah, they were heavy hitters in the game, and like you said, Dr. Dre has a his name is very well known in the hip hop community, East Coast or West Coast. So
Right.
him getting with Dr. Dre was definitely a power move for him, but he still made a very good stamp on hip hop.
I feel that.
But I do think some suburban parents were more comfortable with him. I don't really know why. They probably didn't sit and listen to all his lyrics that well. But you know, there's this guy named Bakari Kitwana that writes about whites, wiggers, wannabes, and hip hop, and he talks about how, kind of like the Elvis effect, right? So Elvis packaged R&B and blues dance moves for a white audience and kind of took them right into homes that maybe wouldn't have watched African Americans on TV or whatnot, or gone into the Harlem Renaissance clubs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, I'm mixing my two historical periods, but
No,
anyway,
no,
you
it's
get the
cool. I
idea.
like talking about Elvis. A lot of people think he the man. I say, yeah, he's a great thief. You feel like the great artist still. That's what they always say.
Yeah.
Public Enemy talks about that, right? And Fight the Power.
Right.
Um, yeah, so some people compare Eminem to that, but the difference is that Bakari Katwana says is that he really was trying to become a part of the culture. He was out there doing the rap battles with others, earning his way in. He wasn't just trying to steal from it and then take it somewhere else. I mean, he
Right.
was trying
Right.
to stay culture, and he says that was the main difference for him and Elvis. But still, he sold a lot more records. And
Mm-hmm.
you can only control
Definitely.
but race is also about perception. And so for these suburban white families that were buying at the time, you still had to buy records. Now the kids can
Yeah.
just stream whatever and not ask mom and dad. So it's
Right.
a whole new world. But back then they were the ones paying the money to get him the music, right? And so he was able to sell more than some others, and understandably, people have resentment about that.
That's cool. That's a nice insight on it. Definitely. So I guess, like you said, now with people getting more on board with the quote unquote hip hop movement, do you feel like a lot of people are respecting the culture, or they just using it as a advertising or a marketing tool just to reach younger generations since it's so popular now?
Yeah.
Well, I think speaking to what Eileen was saying, I think people who are really into the culture are not using it, but are trying to get their talents across to a mainstream audience versus people. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think there are people out there that want to get fame and fortune, and they see hip hop as maybe that avenue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of jump on the bandwagon, and then, like I think of Miley Cyrus, for instance. She had her moment when she was hanging out with, she had Mike Will Made It as her producer, and then she kind of, after the next album or after that album, she kind of switched gears, right? And that happens, I think, a lot. But I think there are still people who are all about hip hop and its culture and its foundation. So I think at the essence of it, there are still artists out there who truly love hip hop and are in it for more reasons than just fame and fortune.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think like J. Cole's and Joyner Lucas, some of those newer guys they're solid as far as hip hop. I think they're there to put a message out, not to gain like Little Pump and Little Peep or whatever the other dudes' names are.
A little worse on.
Yeah. a little trash, but yeah.
So I honestly feel like it's a difference between a rapper and an MC.
Yeah.
Definitely. Somebody that just, can ride a beat, have a nice cadence, and then someone that's actually lyrically intuitive with the spirit of hip hop. Oh, yeah. And then I think it's a difference between hip hop and rap music. I feel like rap is just a popular genre, whereas in hip hop there's a whole culture, there's a whole community and all of that. Right.
Yeah, hip hop stays around.
So I've done some research, thanks to Eileen, gave me some nice paperwork on you. How was it that your research on the Asian involvement in hip hop evolved into an actual exhibit at the LA Museum?
So I actually got recommended for the job. I was pretty fresh out of my PhD program, but another doctor who studies, Dr. Oliver Wang, he's a professor at Cal State Long Beach, recommended me because there's so few of us that do Asian Americans in hip hop. And it was just, I guess, the year that they decided, after like 5 to 10 years in the works, they decided they would have this type of exhibit. It was kind of trailblazing because for that museum, they tend to focus on like child education and then like older folks, right? So this was like a big deal for them. So how it happened is they knew I was doing the research. I kind of provided the vision and also helped to find the artists. It was actually a really great experience for me because it was like coming right off of my dissertation into actually putting it into action. And kind of what we were talking about before, where hip hop is not, I think people think it's just the emceeing, but it is a culture, like you said, right? So it's the idea that you have graffiti artists, you have dancers, you have, people who are DJing and emceeing. So there's multiple aspects to hip hop. So in the show, we actually presented people from all of those realms, and it was really great. I met a lot of artists that had been, doing what they're doing for, decades. They really were committed to their craft, and also, the exhibit gave them a chance to be visible in mainstream society where they were not usually visible. And we see this for Asian Americans. We see it, they lack visibility in popular culture. Like you said, you don't really see a lot of Asian American MCs very often. They're more behind the scenes. So they're kind of I call it like a visible yet invisible group in America because of those things. So it's the idea that, they're not represented in politics. They're not represented in television and film. I focus on film, and in our institute, we point out, that fact and how the Oscars this year were kind of trailblazing as well, because we did see Asians and Asian Americans being nominated for like the first time ever for, Best Actor. So sorry, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but it's the idea that Asian Americans still tend to not be represented in popular culture. So the museum exhibit was a way that, we could introduce a lot of people to this, slice of American culture that is often unseen.
That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think that show, Fresh Off the Boat,
Yeah.
really gave a spotlight on the Asian involvement
Yeah.
in hip hop and pop culture.
Yeah,
Because,
I love
like
the
you said,
soundtrack.
oh yeah, soundtrack's amazing. So, like you said, that's like a stereotypical race where they're just always lumped in together. Where you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, nothing else would be accepted. But seeing that, they were actually appreciative and actually enjoyed and actually wanted to be a part of the culture itself and not just find a quick way to make a buck off of, just what was popular at the time or on the rise in the mid 90s when that set in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that was a nice concept from Eddie Wong himself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that show.
The human panda, that's what he goes by.
Well, let's switch a little subject here. I saw that you studied the interracial relationships. That's something that I've always dealt with because I went to a predominantly white school here in York County, which was no problem. It was a little harder because they put us on a different standard as the other kids. I made it out of there, so I'm glad at that. But the interracial part was the issue I had growing up because my mom was one of the ones that was like, don't bring a white girl home at a certain time until she got to actually meet these girls. But how did you?
Use your comb, don't bring her home.
Yeah. So did you have to deal with any of stuff like that, Eileen?
Oh, definitely. In fact, that's how I got interested in studying race, was through a high school interracial relationship experience. And I don't want to date myself too much, but that was quite a while ago now. And I'd like to think we've come a long way since then. However, as you mentioned, there's still some resistance there. But yeah, I was really surprised how much resistance there was to these kind of relationships, especially since I was raised to treat everyone the same, quote unquote, and that kind of colorblind understanding of how we should operate in the world until it came time to bring someone home or thinking about marrying. So yeah, that got me really curious, particularly about white people. So my dissertation ended up being about white anti-racists, looking at whites who fight the norm, and challenge the system, which is not a whole lot. But I was interested in how people came to, take a different course that way because of all of the pressure to not do that, the pressure to conform, the pressure to just kind of the double speak too. Actually, when I was applying to colleges, my college entrance essay was about Malcolm X's autobiography because that was a really life-changing book for me when I read it in high school because it was the first time I ever saw white people critiqued anywhere. And he talked about the hypocrisy of white people, and I was watching it happen around me in my family and in my community when I was dating interracially. I'm like, this guy is speaking some truth right now. It's funny because I've assigned it later in my classes, and white students will sometimes get defensive. And I'm like, wow, I never had that defensiveness when I read it because I'm like, he's pretty much talking about what I'm seeing, what's going on here, sadly. But then I love that towards the end of his life, he, developed some changes in the way he's thinking about these things, and that maybe a few whites can redeem themselves. So that gave me a little bit of hope. And we always hold on to that slice of hope doing this work because you got to. It's hard work studying all this stuff because it's a mess out there.
Yeah, I still get judged to this day. I married my wife is white and Japanese, so I still get judged to this day. I don't pay no mind no more. It used to bother me, but I don't care anymore. It's just it's
still
still
loving your wife and stuff.
That's right. That's right. It's just crazy that it still goes on to this day. Like you said, you can always have a slice of hope that it might change, but it's just I have a hard time believing that it will anytime soon. Just because of what I've seen, I feel bad for my girls too, because they've already dealt with it. They're light, they're mixed, so they look darker but they've already had dealt with a little bit of. Well, my oldest daughter's always dealt with a little bit of at a playground before, and it broke her heart because she didn't understand why the girl didn't want to play with her. And it hurt my heart because the little girl's mom was right there and just was like, yeah, all right, like it was justified, like she was fine with her daughter saying whatever she said to my daughter at the time. So it's crazy. It's just, especially raising girls or just raising kids period in this world now, it's just it's hard, it's tough.
Right.
Well, I could chime in on, sorry.
No, please,
I was just
go
ahead. I just had one comment. So I also went to predominantly white schools. I was actually the only Black person in my class, K through 12. When I was at my elementary school, my brother and I were the only two Black people in the entire school. And also, I am multiracial, actually. So my parents are Jamaican, but I'm Black, white, and Chinese. So I was always like the token Black person in every class. So I guess I dealt with that, like kind of feeling that I was like the spokesperson for all Black people, because it's like, oh, well, that's the Black person. Let's ask her about this, issue or whatever. So I think, also with, another side to interracial relationships might be like tokenism, where people feel like you are the spokesperson. So it kind of like made me feel, and now that I know more about race, I sometimes think about those stereotypes we have about, Black women, and it really affects you because you feel like you're kind of representing your race. So because I'm usually the only Black person in a lot of situations, I'm like, oh, I don't want to come off too angry. I don't want to come off as this. I don't want to come off as that. Because as Black people, that is what happens, right? It's not like this person is, bad. Ooh, it might be that, you kind of have to represent your race at all times, right? So you can't mess up. You can't do anything that will be brushed off. Let's say, usually if you're white, right? You might get away with a lot of things, but if you're Black, in a lot of situations, it's a lot heavier toll that's taken on you. So that's one thing I guess I've experienced in my life personally.
So have you heard?
Yeah, we talk about that in the book too. That's a white privilege that whites get to be seen as individuals. If they mess up, if they do well, you're not a credit to your race, and you're not a disparagement on the whole race if you mess up, So we really have a double standard here in our society. That's a problem.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I definitely try not to embrace too many stereotypes myself, because it's just they look at you differently. Some, just people in general. Like I try not to eat watermelon in public. For real, I really do. I always get baked chicken.
No Kool-Aid.
Nah, not water. That grape soda looks amazing, but I have some water. I promise. And I try to make light of it and make jokes about it, but it's the God's honest truth. Like that's the first thing that they would think, or something would come across somebody's head. It's just ignorant. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no, you're right.
And I know I'm not the only person that thinks like that, but that's just the way we've been programmed in the society.
Yeah.
That you're not allowed to like a delicious fruit or a delicious piece of chicken. No, something about your ancestry and your DNA matter.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be like that, but the world, like you said, the world we live in, and the times now I think people are now more want to say what's on their mind more now than they have ever, especially about racism.
Right. Well, and that's something I wanted to ask, your personal opinions on. Do you feel like change is coming, or do you feel like our community or our nation is moving forward, especially with the George Floyd case and the guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin? And, is that how important is that for the culture to see, especially after cases like with Breonna Taylor or Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, even Trayvon Martin, and hell, Rodney King? Do you really feel like we're starting to see some type of change, or you feel like that verdict was as important to the culture as it was to his own family?
Well, I think there's definitely, I try to stay hopeful. It's really hard because of the work Eileen and I do to stay hopeful sometimes.
Mhm.
I think, speaking to the George Floyd and Derek Chauvin trial, the fact that he was actually charged and convicted, I think it's something like 99.9 or something, like over 99% of officers that even get charged, will never get convicted. So this was a very, very, very rare moment in history. I think maybe it brought us there because of everything that's happened in the past year. Do I have faith that it will continue? I'm not really sure, because statistically speaking, this is so incredibly rare. I'm glad that it happened, because I think hopefully it will bring some accountability. I don't think it'll bring necessarily justice, just because this is one instance out of how many times have we talked about this issue, right? And these are only the cases we know, right, that have been publicized in the media. And as the verdict's being read, another young Black man is being killed. And it just happens daily, every day. So in that respect, I definitely think that there is hope, although it is grim. I think, we're going to be talking about this in our revised version of our book, but the idea that because of COVID, and the fact that we were going through this global pandemic, we were in financial distress as American people. People had more time, because a lot of people were unemployed, and a lot of young people came out and they took to the streets. And I think, given that perfect storm of factors, it actually created this huge social movement that we kind of are seeing the effects of now. Also, one big thing I think that has helped progress things is Trump is out of office. He was, I mean, I won't start, but like it is a breath of fresh air that he is gone and I don't have to hear him speak. And then he's banned from all social media.
That's crazy.
Because I say that because he is a very hateful person. I think he brought us steps backward on his policies, for BIPOC, communities of color, marginalized communities. The fact he didn't want affirmative action taught in any sort of, with federal funds. The storming of the Capitol. I could go on and on, but I think we got to a certain point that we'd never seen. That storming of the Capitol was something that was unprecedented. And I don't know. I want to be hopeful that because we got to such a low point in American history, that was kind of the fuel that hopefully this year in 2021 we'll start to see more sweeping reforms.
Yeah,
definitely. I know you brought up the pandemic. I know, with you having to spend so much time researching on the Asian culture in America, not just in hip hop, just America, period. And
yes,
with all of the Asian hate that's going on now due to the pandemic, and then after the pandemic itself, seeing how America handled the Black Lives Matter protests, and then how they handled the storm or the insurrection, as they call it. Like, how does that, how what are your opinions on that? I guess I'm pretty sure I know how it makes you feel, but I mean, like, what is your opinion on how you see that with your detailed research that you put into this, the culture itself and race relations?
Yeah, well, that was a huge in your face. I mean, even before this happened, we had a section in the book on, whites calling 911 on Black people doing anything, sitting in their cars, taking a nap, having a party, going to the library, going to their own school where they attend, anything. So we had already seen this pattern in all these little spots all over the country, but to have it, condensed, and we had just had all the media showcase a lot of the violence for the Black Lives Matter protesters. And so then to see the the egregious juxtaposition of how those protesters were treated. I think I saw a figure, something like 93% of all the racial justice protests over the summer were peaceful. So it was only but a few outlier situations that got a little bit out of hand, and mainly that was police violence or outside agitators, not local indigenous protesters from the community even. But nonetheless, you could see the violence that was being foisted on peaceful protesters, and then to have violent terrorists storming the Capitol, being able to access it, that they did, taking artifacts with them, and it was crazy.
Souvenirs.
Yeah, taking pictures at the desk. Yeah, it was
right.
Yeah,
I mean, no protesters, no racial justice protesters are able to get that close to anything.
No, not at all. No.
And a lot of people were hurt with the rubber bullets and all that. I mean, I don't know why we even have all that gear in our police forces for something simple as peaceful march. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, we really saw those two blatant events so close together that you see it all the time in those little, Starbucks in Philly, Barbecue Becky, Permit Patty, all those things. I mean, you saw that everywhere, smatterings of it, but then to have it so huge, what happened in the summer versus what happened in January 6th, I mean, you just couldn't, even the deniers were starting to not be able to deny that there was a double standard there. Really came to a head.
Yeah, and you see, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just continuing on with Eileen's comments. But the fact that you saw that the National Guard was so called so quickly. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and I remember in Santa Monica, because that was one of the areas where we saw looting. I mean, there was National Guards posted up near the beach for weeks, tanks. And we see with the, the storming of the Capitol, no one was called. No reinforcements were called. They didn't have extra security, and, we also have to look at who was in power and who made the decisions not to call those people, right? Because, God forbid white people get violent, no one thinks that will happen.
Right.
So it's mind-boggling to me, and lives were at risk. There were people going into the Capitol saying they wanted to kill our vice president. They wanted to kill certain members of Congress. They had gotten into their offices. People had to be put in hiding. So it wasn't even like, it was kind of a life and death situation. Who knows what would have happened if people actually got close to these politicians. And we know that people did pass away and die as a result of the violence of that day. But again, just honing in on the fact that the double standard is just so glaring in that, in that case, and people still denied it afterwards, denied the severity of that violence. So again, I think it speaks to what Eileen and I write about with white privilege, is you get that privilege to, just be like, oh, well, they were just speaking their minds and they were doing this. But no, that's for other groups, we don't get that leniency.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
And we hear something similar to that, like here in, especially here in Virginia. I'm pretty sure all across the South, especially when we hear stuff like about them trying to keep up the historical background behind those Confederate statues. You know what I mean? And we just had Mayor Stoney here not too long ago, and we just saw just blatant racism from both sides directed at him when he was just trying to tear down those monuments of hate.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was doing. Yeah,
and it's crazy if you look at other countries like in Germany, where everything would they don't have any statues for Nazis. Just still to this day in 2021, they don't. But here in Virginia, they were taking kids to field trips to plantations. You know, like I always said that Virginia looks like Six Flags for slavery.
Yeah, plantations in Colonial Williamsburg.
Yeah. And it's just crazy that you don't see that same or you hear that same argument where, as far as the insurrection, we were just trying to express ourselves, and at the same time you hear things like that all through the country where it's just history. We're just trying to hold on to our history. But what history are you holding on to where it's not progressive enough for everybody to achieve greatness?
Yeah.
You know, in this great land of opportunity that we keep hearing so much about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just mind-boggling. I know I just took a sharp left when I was going with you. You
No.
sparked something right there.
But it's true. It's true.
Yeah. But well, let's talk about the book. It's called White Privilege. How did you come up with that title? And yeah, let's start with that. Like, where did the title come from?
I brought a copy of it.
I was hoping I could get a picture of it to show up on during our interview, and I was looking at the imagery where I see the ladder that's illuminated and very clear as white is taller than the ladder on the far right that's almost black and a lot shorter to where it can't reach the same height. Was that intentional? And if so, please explain.
If you only knew how many back and forths we had about that cover. Right?
I like it.
We had a lot. But yeah, that was intentional because we wanted to show that, you know, that people have advantages, right? So the more you go, the darker into the hierarchy, like skin tone wise, the lower your ladder is, right? Because we see that with white privilege, people are being, you know, just guided up to the top. And other people have to work a lot harder because they don't have those privileges. So a lot of the times, and I want to bring up one point, we talk a lot about equality. So the idea is we want equality, right? But what I would say is better than that is equity, because, you know, let's say we're not all starting at a level playing field. So equality does nothing for us. But if we're talking about equity, that means everyone gets the exact same fair chance, right? So it's like if I give you 50 cents, but a white person already has $10,000 and you only have $1, right? That equality, that 50 cents for both of you makes no real difference, right? So it's the idea that that's what we should be looking for, is the idea of equity, because it's far past just having equality. So a little tangent, but I think that's important to consider the meaning of those concepts.
Yeah, the equity is important because you're right. We're not all starting at the same starting line for the race. If it was a sporting competition, we wouldn't allow it. One of my favorite analogies I heard was at a card game, right? Say you're playing and all of a sudden about 5 hands in, your opponent's racking up. He says, "Oh yeah, I was cheating," right? But from now on, we're going to play fair. Well, the first thing you're going to say is put those earnings, those winnings back in the middle.
Right.
But we didn't do that, right? We were like, you know, all the white people, all the white families that have acquired all this wealth, all these generations, right? When it was not fair rules, they don't get to give any of that back. We just keep playing. Hey, we're playing fair now. Right? There's something wrong with that picture.
So I think for our book, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. There's a little bit of a delay. No, I was just saying, like, I just thinking about what our book in a nutshell is. We wanted to look at white privilege in all realms. So both of us are race scholars, but also we wanted an intersectional lens. And by that, we mean you can't just look at race alone without looking at gender or age or disability, ability status, things like that. So, right, as people, we're not just our race or our gender, right? We have to look at everything together. So that was important to us. And also looking at white privilege in different social institutions. So I focused on popular culture, you know, film, TV, because that's kind of what I'm doing right now at the Gina Davis Institute. But, you know, looking at healthcare inequities, speaking about COVID again, right? So COVID is hitting people of color the hardest. We look at, economics, which Eileen was talking about, like wealth. There's such a huge gap if we're just looking at whites and blacks over time. You want to look at policing and the criminal justice system. We know a lot about that, right? And how unequal and unfair it is. And so there's, education, employment. There's so many sectors of life that you can really see how entrenched white privilege is and how far reaching it is, that we don't even think about it on an everyday basis, and to know kind of the severity of it. So that was kind of, I think, for both of us, our thinking in doing this work, is to kind of just show like how it appears everywhere, and everything is intermingled too. So
yeah, and I think the intersectionality thing that Nosh mentioned, it's kind of a buzzword in academia, but basically what it means is that you're looking at other things besides race. So class, gender, age, sexual orientation, religion, other factors that will make your life a little bit harder than someone else's, right? And so I think it's important to look up all that, because some people get very defensive when they hear the term white privilege, because they don't feel very privileged. Life is hard. But there's also class privilege. You may have race privilege, but you might not have class privilege, right? Or you may have gender privilege, but you may not have race privilege, and on and on. So there's cross-cutting planes there, if you can think of it as all these different interlocking planes. And so what we really like to try and push the envelope with in our book is to look at, okay, it doesn't mean people are not having a hard life or having a struggle, but that struggle that you have might be about your gender or your class, but it's not necessarily going to be about your race, right? If you're a white person, you might be more likely to survive an encounter with the police, right? Even if you have no money whatsoever. We know from the statistics that Nosh mentioned earlier that you're probably going to have certain advantages, not because you're not working hard, right? But because of other factors. And also just thinking about, there doesn't necessarily have to be overt discrimination for white privilege to be going on. So like, I might not be a discriminator or even prejudiced myself, but if I go in to look at an apartment after Nosh does, and they told her it wasn't available, but they give it to me, what does that make me? Am I a racist? So we try and have that conversation, that we're always pointing fingers. You're racist. You said this, and you're looking at the big slur. Of course, we had a blatant example in the highest office for 4 years. It wasn't that hard to find him saying terms of all kinds. But there's also a lot of the more subtle things that go on that create privilege, that you don't have to be saying slurs and bad words and pushing people out to unfortunately be a part of that system.
Oh, awesome. So why do you feel like this book is needed now in today's society?
Well, I think it's been needed for a long time, and I know people have written on this, but specifically I think everything that's happened in 2020, it's just historical in so many ways. Not only with race, but again with COVID, with like this financial depression that we're going through. So many hundreds of thousands of lives lost through the pandemic. I think it's necessary because I do think, because of the social conditions, this is a really good time for change to be made. We have more capable leadership on the top now. And people who I think are trying to reverse what the damage that has been done in the last 4 years, at least at that level. But I think it's time, because when we do have historic events like this happen, the potential is there to make great change. So I think by, doing our part as being educators and writers, we can, give people the information And hopefully that can spread change through just the awareness. I think awareness is so important. And I think both of us as educators and having, many students in our careers, that it does make a difference when people can access the information and they know where to find it.
Yeah, speaking of where to find it, a lot of people are asking where can they pick up this book from.
So we actually have. Oh, Eileen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you can find it on Amazon. But if you want to wait a hot minute, we have a revised first edition coming out. I mean, you can buy both editions. We would love it if you buy both editions.
I was just telling a storyteller. I said, you jumped the gun, and we went over these notes in the car. Yeah, because I was going to ask about what's the difference in the, because originally this book was released in 2020, but this is a re-release of the first edition. So I want to know what was the included extra chapter that would be in this re-release, and what makes a re-release so special. And then where they can find it and all that good stuff.
Let them go ahead and buy both of the books, man.
I mean, hey, I ain't mad at them. I'm sure they're not either. They will come by EBI all the time.
That's right.
If you just type in white privilege and McTaggart and O'Brien, it will pop up on Amazon quick. But I would love for Nosh to tell the story of how we got the revised first edition, because that's one of those things, right? If you don't ask, the answer's always no. But she had the guts to ask, and here we are.
So basically, we were very excited about having our book out in 2020. I believe, it came out in January of 2020, and of course, COVID hit in March. So we were writing about all these things, and then everything changed. Our whole world changed over the past year plus. So we actually talked to our publishers and asked them about that, given the very unprecedented circumstances in society, could we, add to our book? I think it would be really important, especially because we wanted to incorporate all of the social movements that were happening over the summer. And then, of course, as we were discussing things, then the insurrection happened, the election happened. So things that were very, very, very big as far as white privilege, we wanted to include there. So our publisher said it's not normal to do a revised copy in a year's amount of time, but because there was so much that went on, that kind of went with the white privilege concept, they were able to give us that revision after a year instead of having to wait like 3 years to do that. So that will be different. In this version of the book, we'll be talking about COVID. We'll also be talking about the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes. We'll be talking about the Capitol siege. We'll be talking about the election. We'll be talking about healthcare inequities and follow up on what we already had written, but how it applies to COVID specifically. So basically just, giving information on the craziness of the past year plus, right. And kind of, following what we've already been talking about, but seeing everything really come into like a spotlight, I would say, in the past year or so. Yeah.
Yeah, and we already had a closing chapter on all of the things you can do to get involved and fight for racial equity and justice. But in this chapter, we also wanted to add the things that actually had happened, that racial justice activists have been fighting for generations, like for the Washington football team to change its name. Like, people have been fighting for that since before I was born. Right. It's been a while. And nobody ever thought that would, like you mentioned, you had Mayor Stoney on a couple of weeks ago, and no one ever thought that statue would come down, those statues on Monument Avenue, So there were some things that happened that were really progressive, as a result of all the movements that happened all over the summer. So we wanted to, at the same time that there were a lot of egregious, horrible things that happened, we did want to also include some of the more positive things to show that it's worth getting involved, it's worth speaking up, it's worth taking action, because you never know when something positive might happen.
Right. Yeah, they retired Aunt Jemima too. They weren't playing this
shit. That's right.
Yeah. So now Pepsi owns that company. We're gonna get some crystal clear syrup.
I know. I don't even want to see that.
That is awesome. So the original release is available now on Amazon, and the re-release will be available when?
I think in the fall.
July.
Yeah, July. So even earlier. Yeah.
And are you? This is my pretty much my last question on the book. Are you looking at that to be just a casual read, or are you hoping that can be geared towards maybe a textbook or a learning tool for future students in the same field, as far as in racial relations and sociology?
Well, our publisher is a textbook publisher, so we really have had to work with them and making sure it shows up on Amazon, making sure it shows up at a reasonable price point. But I think we've been successful at doing that. Nosh is a fighter. I love working with her because she won't let up on those things. I'm the more nice one, like, okay, I guess, whatever you say. And she's like, no, we need it here. So it's been really great because we've been able to make sure, and it is on Amazon now. It's just that, hit us up if you really want to buy it now, and we can, email you the last chapter, but we would love for you to be able to see it all together. I think they told us they're going to change the cover slightly, so it's worth just seeing what they do with the ladders.
Definitely.
For the revised edition.
Definitely. So do you think it'll be great as a learning tool, the book itself?
I think so. I mean, one of the things that we kind of went back to our publishers about is making it interdisciplinary, because I think this book, although we're both sociologists, it covers so much ground. So if, let's say, you're a criminologist, if you're in the healthcare field, if you're, an educator, if you're, popular culture person like me, everyone can find something there. And I think that that's one of the biggest strengths of the book, is it just covers a lot of ground. And I think it doesn't have to only be for people who are studying sociology or race. I think that it is, it would be good for anyone who just wants to learn more about this topic in general.
Yeah, we've even been surprised at the diversity of interests that we've gotten. Like our sales report from this past quarter or earlier in the year, it was a bunch of nursing students that picked it up, and that was off our radar. We weren't even really sending it out to. We don't have as many medical school contacts or whatever, but as Nosh said, this has always been an issue with the healthcare field. But COVID, people started paying more attention. Something about 2020, I mean, people have been shouting about this stuff for decades. And all of a sudden in 2020, people started to listen, So apparently in medical schools, in nursing schools, they're finally trying to examine some practices they've been doing. Nosh just emailed me an article today on CNN about how they're using race, to predict people's survival chance and different things, like adjusting the equation. Wow. Why are you doing that?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So there's every area of social life this can apply to. So we hope that a lot of people can benefit from it.
That's great.
I know I'm definitely gonna be putting in my order for one, for the one that's out now and the new one. I actually got it right now. I got it pulled up.
Thank you.
Hey, he do. That's awesome.
Only got 4 left.
Oh wow, they only got 4 left, people.
And I think
I
also
feel like Amazon always says that, They buy it right now before it's gone. Then tomorrow there's like 10 more.
And I think if you go through Yep.
Yeah.
If you go through Cognella or Publisher, I believe it's cheaper there. So we want
Okay.
you know, just buy it there, and you can also, I believe, get like the digital copy there
Okay.
through Cognella, like if that's what you prefer. I know some people like to read on their tablets or whatever. But if you look up white privilege Cognella, it'll get you to the link. And, just shop around, see what's the cheapest. We recommend that. So yeah, we want it to be accessible for everyone.
That's awesome.
That's good. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can actually read the first chapter for free on the Cognella site also.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Got a little appetizer for you. Come on now.
Give you a little taste. Yeah.
I'm not gonna get mad at appetizer,
After that, you're gonna be real hungry.
Right, right.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I personally thank you for taking some time out with us. I know we got started late and you stayed back with us a little later than you intended, and we definitely appreciate it.
Definitely.
I don't know if you got another question for him or.
I don't think I had it too many, nothing serious, but I just wanted to know, have you had a chance to meet anybody that was very inspirational as far as hip hop wise? I know I saw Eileen. I think you met Chuck D at one point. I always liked Chuck D because he was very he was a part of my childhood growing up, Public Enemy and all that. So I think that's dope.
Yeah, he's written some books too. Yeah, he came to University of Richmond to speak when I was teaching there, so I got a chance to, do a little photo op with him. But yeah, I think Nosh has interviewed some hip hop artists out there in California too.
Yeah,
I don't know. Who I met that's inspirational? Go ahead, Nosh.
I was just trying to jog my memory of who I've met. For my dissertation, I actually interviewed Anderson .Paak, who was like just before he was with the Dr. Dre. Like he hadn't really blown up yet, and my brother's a musician, so he was able to get me in touch with him through a friend of a friend of a friend. So it's interesting to see like how huge he's gotten, and also he's just a very, very nice person. So that was really fun for me as a researcher and a graduate student. So that's one person who comes to mind. And then also the Beat Junkies. They're very big here on the West Coast. Just legendary DJ crew, right? Repmatic, Babu, Chalk, Mr. Chalk, just so many. So they were actually a part of my exhibit. So I was just, low key, just inside, just screaming with joy because I was so happy that they were a part of it. So I think just everyone I met in my exhibit, I met some really cool graffiti artists as well, dancers. So, that was really cool to get to do that also, and like part of my job.
Yeah. I've always loved graffiti. Actually, the shirts we just got made had graffiti art on them, and I've always loved.
Nice.
Break dancing too. I think that Jabberwocky is probably the best dance crew out right now. That's got a little Asian in them, but
mess around, break your hip, you try to spin around.
I didn't say I want to do that. I said they're good at it.
That's how I got that bald spot spinning on my head too long.
Yeah, right. That's called age, sir. I appreciate y'all definitely coming out and doing this for us. This is very informative, and it was dope. It's dope.
Yeah, it was nice to have a different viewpoint on how everybody's viewing society nowadays and right now, and it was awesome for you all to just take this time out and come visit the EBR show. We really appreciate it.
Definitely do.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, very much. Thank you. We'd love to come back anytime you want some commentary.
What? Oh yeah,
we'll come back.
We would definitely be reaching out to you. Definitely.
Y'all heard Dr.
That sounds great.
She said it.
Yep. I'm committing to it right now, so
awesome.
You can take me up on it.
Back when part 2 drops. That sounds like a good idea.
Yes. That would be wonderful.
Shoot. Feel like we did something today,
I
player.
Do too. Oh, watch out now.
Was there anything else that you want to say to the people at home or maybe listening or tuning in before we let you go?
Just stay vigilant. Don't give up. Keep speaking out. It makes a difference. Every conversation you have with someone, every petition you sign, every time you come out and march, if you can, it makes a difference. Wherever, get in wherever you fit in.
Yeah, I hear that.
So get in where you fit
I
in.
know that's right.
I don't know.
I also agree with Eileen. Is just there's different ways that you can participate in this process. So for us, maybe it's giving us, doing this, right? Having the conversation, educating students, writing things. But you can also protest. You can give to bail funds. You can donate your time with, civil liberties organizations. You can, fight for legislation to be passed. You can vote for people, right? You can support Black business. You can, support creators that are from marginalized communities. So there's so many ways you can make change. I think all of it is necessary to get us going and keep up that momentum. So for anyone who thinks, oh, I'm only doing this or I'm only doing that, like if a lot of us do those little things, it does make a difference. So like Eileen says, we just got to keep going.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, and we look forward to talking to you soon. And again, this is Dr. Nash and Dr. Eileen. I'm gonna try and make sure I say it right. Ninochka McTaggart. Did I say it right?
McTaggart, yeah.
Almost there. I got it though. And Eileen O'Brien, the co-authors of White Privilege. Make sure you pick up your copy today, or wait till July and get the revised version, or show some extra love and get both of them.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for coming by, and we will look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Man,
that was a good one.
That was awesome, brother.
That was a good one. Man, yo, is it me or is it just hot in here, son?
It is blazing hip-hop and R&B right now. And we are not talking about the radio station.
I'm trying hard to fight this sweat up on this. Woo, it's hot in here.
Oh, man.
But that was another great interview. That I'm glad we had that one.
Yeah.
We needed something like that. Oh,
yeah.
Man. Yeah, we better get up out of here. Wonder Boy or Boy Wonder.
This guy, man.
Because these bugs flying in my eyes, too. What is that? The gnats?
Hey, it's hot outside. You can't be leaving your door open no more, man.
Did you hear that running up on the ceiling?
Bruh.
Yeah. Oh, see? So we got squirrels.
Time to skate. Come on now. Come on now.
Yeah. Before we get up out of here, peace out to my wife, the kids, Naomi. You better be listening to your mama. I know Zuri ain't. She just running around acting crazy. But I love y'all. Love Jalen. To the other kids, Nehemiah, Michaela. See, big ups to Jason and Raven for allowing us to have my baby's 7th birthday party at their house. She had like a 70-foot bounce house at their house, and it was great. She had a good time with all the kids, and it was a great thing. Oh, and big ups to Shannon out for So Lux. She's giving us a lot of business these next couple months, and we are more than happy to work with her.
Yeah, make sure y'all check out So Lux.
What's it?
757.
Yeah.
.com. Make sure you want to.
You know the address still, don't you?
Nah, I don't.
It's on Hornsby. It's across from the mall, Patrick Henry Mall, right by Carrabba's. You can't miss it. It's a nice location. I guarantee you'll have a great time there if you plan your events there. It's a nice, like I said, nice location.
Wow, got it. www.solux757.com. You make sure you check that out if you want to book your next event.
Yeah.
And the address is 12373 Hornsby Lane, Suite A, Newport News, Virginia 23608. That's right, people, uptown, across from the Patrick Henry Mall.
We finally got something on this side of the water. Let's keep it, and not the alley. We don't go to the alley. But let's keep this over here because this is a nice little establishment.
Yeah.
And we can have some good stuff going on over there if we can keep it here and not have the foolishness going on.
Yeah, so you want to book your next event there, wedding, reception, birthday party, bingo.
NBA Finals.
You got it.
Playoffs coming up. You can have a little event over there for that.
And if you need a DJ and a MC or a chubby fat guy that's just funny on the microphone, here we go.
That's right.
EBR is available. We are listed on the talent list.
Yeah. Her directory, DJ and host. Just look under either one of them. We under there. But I think that's about it for me there, brother. You got it.
Special shout out again to Dr. Nash and Dr. Eileen for stopping by and pulling up on the EBR show. Much love to my family, wife, kids. I love you all. I think that's about it for me, man. I think we had us a great day.
Yes, hot too.
Yeah, had a great episode, and thank you all to the listeners
like
and anybody that's paying attention to something that we're doing. We definitely appreciate it.
You
All the shares,
like
all the likes.
Huh? You do sound like Barry White.
Oh, my bad. The mic levels. I'm in the
it's
mic.
It's you, yo.
It's me.
Yeah.
Anywho, we appreciate the love and the support. We appreciate everybody that took time to watch, look, and listen, and share, and check us out on YouTube as well. Everything But Religion. We out of here. Don't forget what I tell y'all every week. Please remember, some people are so poor, all they have is money. Don't die broke, boy, people. Make time for what's important in your life. We out.
Peace.